very common. One of the key differences between the two is the TOEFL is the American dialect and the IELTS is the British dialect of English. So as you know, in dialects, they spell some words differently, things like that. Other times, universities may also accept alternative exams to display your English levels. That might be your SAT scores, that might be your IB, could be IGCSEs. That's also common, but most often they will request one of these English proficiency exams. Schools do also have exemptions as well. Sometimes exemptions do come up where they will say, oh, if you studied in a school where the language of instruction was English for X amount of years, then you don't have to take this exam. Or if you were in IB, English A, Lang and Literature, you won't, and you have this score, this predicted score, you won't have to provide this exam. But it does come up. It is a pretty common requirement for any institution that is teaching in English. So we do recommend students to take it depending on the university. Obviously, we look for opportunities for you to avoid that, because that is a bill, right, that parents have to pay for, and it's not cheap. So if there is an opportunity where we can avoid you having to pay that fee for that exam, or you can get it waived per university policy, then we do look for that. And it's a relatively easy exam. So if you've been studying at STA, for example, since you were this small and you grew up here and you studied the English all your life, students can wake up and just go take the exam. It doesn't require you to study and to prep and tutor. If you study in English and you've been studying English, it'll be no problem. Okay, so this slide is just explaining how the exams are scored. Very simple. In the universities, when you're looking at universities' requirements, it will tell you what they expect you to score, what the minimum score you would need to meet their English proficiency requirement. Typically, the IELTS is used for UK schools, but it can be like, the UK is the only country that specifically requests the IELTS, okay? But you can use the IELTS for any region, any university that asks for English proficiency exams, you can use it. But for example, if you took the TOEFL and then you were applying to the UK, they would expect the IELTS instead of the TOEFL. Does that make sense? So IELTS is generally or is specifically requested by the UK, but can also be used anywhere in the world. The results also, I don't know if it's on the slide, but the results, so for example, you can take the IELTS in year 12, for example, and the results last 2 years, right? So you don't have to wait until year 13 to take it. If you know that is going to be a requirement for a program that you're going to apply to, you could take it in year 13 at the beginning of the year. You could take it in the summer, and the results last 2 years, and those 2 years will exceed your high school. It will exceed, so past year 13, so you can already have those results ready and available for your applications. And there's a specific type of IELTS that you would need to take, because if you don't know this, then you may register for the wrong IELTS, but it's called the IELTS Academic. The IELTS Academic is the IELTS that is expected for any university that requires the English proficiency test when applying the IELTS Academic. There's also another type of IELTS in the UK, which is only for students who are going through a foundation foundation pathway in the UK. It's called the IELTS Academic UKVI. UKVI stands for UK Visa and Immigration, which is it's the same test. It's the same test, but the IELTS UKVI is located at a more secure location. I don't really know what the secure part is. It's specific test locations that you have to test at, and it costs more money for the exam, but you would only use it for the foundation pathway if that was the route you were going for UK studies. Otherwise, you would use the IELTS academic. Now, again, if you are an IB student and you're taking English A, you won't need to take the IELTS. You won't need to take the IELTS or any English proficiency exam to prove your English level when applying to the UK. Just want to put that out there. Other countries, you may still need it, or there may be exemptions based on how long you've studied in English and other things, but UK specifically, in English A, you won't need it. And that's English A under the full diploma, not just courses, but the full diploma. And these just are the links to where you can register for the IELTS or the TOEFL. And we just want to make sure we highlight this important part at the bottom, that when you are registering for these exams, that you are using your full government name, right? Your government name that is listed on your identification. And you want to make sure when you are registering that you spell it correctly. So check for typos and errors. Make sure everything is spelled exactly to the T and it matches your government documents that you would use to prove your identity. And there's plenty, and so like also, it's not like these exams aren't like other exams that we'll talk about. There's plenty of dates and test dates. They have it all the time, so you could just register next week if you wanted to, for example, and have a test date and go knock it out. All right. So that's basically it for the IELTS and TOEFL. It's not really much more to discuss in that. So now we're going to talk about the ACT and the SAT. Okay, so do you really need to take the SAT or ACT? It depends, right? It depends on where you're applying. Oftentimes, this is seen in the U.S. institutions. These days, the SAT and ACT are optional. Some schools are starting to revert back to making these exams required, but for the most part and the majority, it's optional. And so you can take the test, and if you score well, you can submit the score, or you can take the test, and if you don't score well enough, you don't have to submit it, you can apply without it, or you can not take the test and just apply without the exams. But we do recommend all students who have intentions of applying to the U.S. to take the SAT at least once. The SAT can also come up in other regions as well, particularly American-style schools that are located outside the U.S. So there's American-style schools that are located in Europe and other countries where they may also have a test optional policy for the SAT. There are also branch campuses, right? So there's a branch campus of an American institution in another country that may also have a SAT, ACT test policy where you can submit the SAT as well. Of course, some of you may be familiar with the requirement here for Thai universities. The SAT comes up for some of those applications as well. And then scholarships as well, if you are, and this is, scholarships, they may also look at your test scores as well, because sometimes scholarships are competition and you're competed against other applicants, so they may use that as a data point to compare you to other people who are applying for the scholarship. So it can come up, and you can find this out as you're doing your research. Like I said, oftentimes this will come up for the American and American style or American branch campuses, but it may come up in some other regions, and when you're doing your research, they'll let you know very clearly if it's they have a SAT or ACT test policy. All right, so why do they like these exams? Well, particularly in the U.S., the purpose of these exams was to measure college readiness, right? It was to measure college readiness in the U.S. That's what it was founded on. So they still use it for that purpose, but I like to say it's just it's a data point. It's another data point that universities use to compare students, right? Because when you get to certain levels, certain like competitive universities, a lot of students, if you're thinking just academically, they start to look the same on paper, right? Because you're getting all the 4.0s and the 40 plus IB students and the whatever applying to these top institutions, right? So if we're only looking at transcripts, what's another data point we can use to differentiate the applicants? These exams. Now, that's just one way, right? That's just one way they differentiate students. But that's particularly why the U.S. uses these exams. So they will never make you submit to both of them. You either take one or the other. You either take the SAT or the ACT. You can take both if you want to, right? And if you get a better score in one over the other, that's great. But you will never be required to submit both of them to an institution. They will always say either this score or this score. Or this test or this test. And whichever one you decide to do, that's up to you. But they will accept them both equally. There's no one is better than the other. They look at them the same across the board. All right, in Thailand, it's an entrance exam. They use it for entrance exams, the admission criteria. Other countries, they might use it for English proficiency, right? Because the SAT is, part of it is evidence-based reading and writing. So they use that to assess your English proficiency. And then as well as they have the math portion that they can use to assess your math levels, basically, for like when they place you in certain subjects depending on what you're going to be studying at the university. So this is just some different test policies that I'm going to go through that oftentimes comes up in the U.S. particularly. The most common is going to be test optional, but I'm just going to go through them just to explain it so you just have an idea of what to expect if you, one day decide you want to pursue studies in the U.S. and these terms come up. Okay, so like I was saying earlier, test optional is just that. It's optional, right? So you have the option to submit the ACT or SAT or not. It's not required. And their policies say if you don't submit the test score, any exams, they won't hold that against you. But if you do, they will hold that against you. And so oftentimes we tell students, if you do take the exam and you don't perform well, and they say you don't have time to take it again to try to get a better score, do not submit it, right? Because that's going to negatively impact your application, all right? So if you have a good score, and good scores can be subjective, right? Because it depends on where you're applying to, if that score is good enough for that institution or not. So if you do have a good score that fits the university that you're applying to, we will tell you to submit it because it will be an asset to your application. But if it's not, don't do it, just for the sake of your application. So test optional, very simple. It's not required. You can submit it or not, and then that's pretty much it. Text flexible is just that they will accept something different in replace of the exams, of the SAT or ACT, essentially. That's all. That's nothing more to that. Uh-oh. Yeah, test blind, they won't even, basically, they won't even consider it. They won't use that. They won't use the exams as a data point for assessing your admissibility into the university. Test blind. Simple as that. Okay? Okay, so how many times should you take the SAT or ACT or take the exams? Now, technically, you could take it as many times as you want to, right? If you got the money to keep paying for the exam, you want to keep showing up at 7 o'clock in the morning on a Saturday, you can keep doing that. That's your business. Now, will you find benefits in taking it an excessive amount of times? No, you won't. The research and the data has shown and proven that students who take the exams more than 3 times, after the third time, or at the third time, your scores either flatline or go down. You can see it on our chart here. Okay, so any more than 3, you kind of wasting your money, really. We don't recommend no more than 3. If you can get it on the first 2 times, great. If you get a great score on the first time, great. You don't need to take it anymore. But maybe if you don't score that well the first time, the second time you improve a little bit, but you feel like I can take it one more time and I can get right there. I'm just a couple points off. Go right ahead. We would encourage that. But after that third time, if you don't hit that mark, I would like, okay, it's time let's just leave it alone. Let's leave it alone. If this test optional, you don't have to submit your test score, right? Or we can look at schools that might fit your SAT score, right? A school where your SAT score would be a strong score, and would be an asset to your application. Okay, so in summary, 3 times max. If you choose to go more than 3, we won't stop you. Of course, that's your money and your business, but you won't expect like a good return on your investment after that. Oh, okay. So now I'm gonna talk specifically about the SAT, some details about the exam. So, like I said earlier, this is what the SAT measures: math and evidence-based reading and writing. The score goes from 400 to 1600, and it's broken up between the scores is broken up between A and B. So the most you can get in A is an 800, the most you can get in B is an 800. The scores could be varied based on how you perform in each section. And the reports come out about 2 weeks, a little less than 2 weeks actually, maybe like a day, 13 days to be exact, after you take the exam. So yeah, I think that's it. Now, I'm gonna wait before I click the rest of the, so, I don't think any of you all may know this, the students, but parents, you may remember, you probably are familiar when the SAT was a paper exam, right? And it's not like that anymore. Technology has evolved, of course, and allowed us to be able to, or allowed them to be able to facilitate this exam digitally, which has come with some benefits, by the way, which I'll show you. But paper exams, SAT, no longer exist. That's been out for a couple years now. Everything is digital, computer. They come to the test center with their computer. Everything, they have a platform that they have to download, and that pretty much manages the test. And then, the proctors and everybody kind of is still in the room, but it's no longer a bubble sheet and all of that. So Here are some comparisons, what's different and what's the same. So the content, the score is still given at a test center, which is typically a school. Resources are still available. It's still time. You still have to pay the fees, of course. The only difference is the laptop. It's on a laptop or a tablet. It's certainly more difficult to cheat because once you submit your answers, once the time runs out and your answers are submitted, you can't change them. But before on the paper, you can always go back and erase a little bubble and circle something in, and you could get away with that. Maybe the proctor wasn't looking, but now it's just once it's submitted, it's submitted. It's also shorter as well, less time on the exam, and I'll have a slide about that as well. Another interesting feature is that it's adaptive. The test is adaptive. Now, what do I mean by saying the test is adaptive? That means essentially so there's two modules in the evidence-based reading and writing and the math, okay? And let's say we're on the math module. On the first part of the math module, it's kind of like, let's say, they're just asking you a range of difficulty questions, easy, medium, hard, okay? Depending on how you perform on that first section of math, the next section is either going to be harder or easier. That's what I mean by adaptive. So I'm going to say it again. In the math section, let's say in the first section of math, they're going to ask you a range of questions. You're going to get tested on a range of questions, easy, medium, hard questions, right? The whole spectrum. Depending on how the student performs in that section, the test on the section after that will be harder or easier depending on how you performed. If you wasn't doing well, it'll give you easier questions. If you were doing well, the questions will get a little bit more difficult. That's the adaptive feature of the digital SAT. All right. So another couple things, last 2 points. Registration dates are later, and I didn't know that the scores arrived differently, but I guess the scores arrived before the next deadline, which is convenient. Well, because it's digital and you don't have to, because before we used to have to mail everything back, and that would take time, so the scores would take a little bit longer to return, but since it's all kind of processed digitally, you can get your scores back quicker. All right, so this is just a comparison between the paper and digital. Before you had 96 questions, now you got 54. It was 100 minutes, which puts you at a minute per question. And then, is that right? Yeah. And then now it's 64 minutes. I think that, okay, no worries. 64 minutes, shorter reading passages. So these 54 questions, for example, are broken up into two sections. By the way, remember I was saying it's the first section with easy, medium, hard, and then there's the second section that is adapted based on how you performed in the first. So it's I think they call them modules. So this is broken up into two sections. Same thing with the math. Before they had a calculator and non-calculator section. Now it's just you can use the calculator on the whole exam. 54 questions, 44 questions. So it's still two sections. So I don't want this language, one section, to confuse you. The test is still broken up into two parts for math, where you have the easy, medium, hard, and then an adaptive section. This is just the section is just saying like it's all for, you can use a calculator, because before you had the non-calculator and the calculator part. So it's still two parts in the math for the easy, medium, hard, and then the adaptive part. And they split the time up as well. So the first section will be timed for whatever with the questions, and so on with the next part. All right, so these are just some, so there are free resources that do exist for these exams because we love free things, free resources, free food, all of that. And so you can use these resources to prep and practice for the SAT for free if you would like. Or there are paid resources as well that exist, and they do cost a lot of money. But we prefer to share the free resources with our community because we love free things, right? So you can click on these links when we share the slides, but the SAT is through this College Board platform, which is like basically the conglomerate for university and college resources and information. And you can just go Google College Board SAT resources, and it'll bring you stuff immediately. You can also go to Khan Academy if you're familiar with Khan Academy and take advantage of their free resources as well. They will have like full practice tests that are timed, all these, all the resources basically that can give you an idea of what to expect on the exam. And you can take it as many times as you want, from my understanding. Okay, so this is just a quick slide about what you should bring on the test day. Now, when you register, they will tell you this information, right? It's not the only time you will see this here. We just want to provide it for you. But when you do register and you going through the process, they will provide you with all the details and things that you need to, be prepared for the exam. But particularly, we just want to make sure that for our students that you all know, you need to bring your ID, your passport or your Thai ID, whatever official government ID, so you can be admitted into the test center. Don't come with your student ID because that won't work. You won't be admitted into the test center. So any place you go to for the exam, take your Thai ID, national ID, or your passport, so you can be admitted to the test center. But again, all of this stuff will be shared with you by College Board when you register. They'll tell you every detail. So it's essentially just reading your emails so you know what's going on. So for anybody that has accommodations at school or learning support needs, accommodations are available for any of the exams, ACT or SAT, that you can apply for. And you would just need to, do it, apply for these accommodations in advance and submit the necessary documentation, and then they'll provide you with the accommodations that you may need for the SAT, if it's extended time or a separate room or extra breaks, whatever the case may be. It's a very common process in these exams. So if you do have accommodations, you get accommodations at school, you can request those through College Board as well, or through the SAT registration as well. All right, so these are the dates, right? And these dates, these are not all the dates, because we have kind of a proposed, we good? Okay. We have a proposed schedule that we recommend students follow for the test exams, right? So you'll see these dates. So in year 12 and 11, we say, okay, you could take the PSAT. The PSAT is just a practice version of the SAT. That's what the P stands for. But you take it at school, and it's kind of like it's arranged like the real SAT, but it's a practice version, which is helpful for practicing for the SAT. And then following that, these are the dates And this is the time that we encourage students to take the SAT, the official SAT, which is in year 12 in the spring, or after term 2. Yeah, after term 2 in the spring, where you can start doing your official test dates. So you could take it as early as March for your first attempt. If you don't want to do it in March, you can do it in May for your first attempt or your second attempt, vice versa. You see how it follows. At the latest, in August of year 13. Why in August? Because not exams, but application deadlines and things are approaching, and you also got other things you need to be focused on in year 13 outside of the SAT. So year 13 is a lot more heavier than year 12, so you kind of have that freedom to study and prepare for the SAT or ACT in year 12 versus year 13 when you're preparing for these IB exams and other exams that are all coming up. So you don't want to have to deal with that and other exams in the school, right? So year 12, you're not focused on the IB exams and other things that are coming up. So that makes more sense for you to take it at that time. Now, if you can still, just to clarify, if need be, you needed to take it in October, for example, in year 13. That is possible. You're not restricted to August, but that's just not what we recommend in the best interest of the student. And this is how you register at this link on College Board. You can also just Google SAT registration, and it'll take you right to the website. And the same thing as the IELTS and TOEFL registration. Definitely make sure you put your government name, full name, and the spelling is correct, because if you don't spell your name correct and you go to a test center for the SAT, they may not let you test, and that would be not good news to receive at 7 o'clock in the morning on a Saturday. Yeah. All right, Mr. Rob, I think it's your turn. Mr. Rob is going to talk about the ACT.
Thank you. The lesser common exam, I think, in this area of the world where we come from, but it is an opportunity for students who may want to maybe look at an exam that has a science section. So SAT is the primary exam that most of our students take. Your son or daughter may come home, or sorry, you don't have son or daughter, do you? The students might go home and start talking about the ACT. I've heard about this exam. Maybe I should think about taking that. Before registering and taking any exams like this, I would recommend that if your son or daughter, they are inquiring about this exam as opposed to the SAT, maybe have them sit down and take some practice exams. Some exams are better suited than others for some students, so it's a good idea to get comfortable with the exam before you take it. Moreover, some of these exams, you can find exam questions online. Again, there are full practice exams online that are actually timed and tested that way. If you do find an exam that is a practice exam that maybe doesn't have an interface, or it's not connected to the internet, follow those instructions strategically to the T. So a lot of this experience is not necessarily the knowledge that you're going to learn. It's learning how to take a test within a certain amount of time, because there is some anxiety that goes into it. And when you learn how much time you do and don't have when you're at a certain place in the exam, you'll know, I should feel comfortable right now, I have a lot of time, or oh, maybe I should try this again, I need to revise my strategy. So timing can often be something. So practice exams before you take one of these real ones and you register could be a good idea. So universities equally accept the ACT, the majority of them anyway. I know the United States does. Computer-based format, but it's not adaptive. As Mr. Daquan said, they've developed the SAT into a system where it's not going to allow a student to sit there and struggle through an entire exam when it can adjust some questions to really find out maybe your aptitude and level. Here, one of the big differences, a 3-hour exam, there's an optional essay section, and that could turn this exam into about 4 hours. which again, exam exhaustion. It's very tedious. It does present some more information that you would have to prepare for, because as you can see, the math and science is included in this exam. Optional essay, and the highest score you can receive here is a 36. And scores are released pretty quickly. I'll let you read that on your own there. Again, we'll send these slides out to you, correct? And you will have this will all be made available to you. One thing that maybe we forget to mention in public sometimes, if you do not have access to our Careers in Higher Education website, we strongly encourage you to get there. It has wonderful information. Because we do know sometimes we talk to a student comes home and maybe some of the information maybe is not as thorough as it was when we were talking in the meeting. Not that they're trying to mislead you, but the website can often provide you a chance to verify some of the things you've heard when they get home and tell you things. And again, don't hesitate to contact us if something doesn't add up quite right. But that's kind of the format of the ACT. Again, we don't spend as much time on the ACT as we do with the SAT, because SAT is our primary source of information to send to universities if we do. The test dates are there for you. Again, Mr. Daquan gave a real good synopsis on when we like students to take certain exams. We really, really push for students to avoid exams in term 1 of year 13. The students in the black shirts here, they've heard from the students in the previous black shirts that just graduated or are getting into this. There's a lot of rigor to it. And our goal is to have your son or daughter have the ability to focus on their schoolwork almost 95% of the time. So we provide them tasks over the summer in year 12 so they are prepared for year 13, because applications and academics collide. It can become quite difficult. So we do try and create a timeline where the students have the ability to focus on their schoolwork for the most part. But there are some of your ACT test dates. And again, our website has some pros and cons, compare and contrast. And again, before you register and spend money on exam, maybe take a practice, see if it's for you. And then we also encourage students to contact universities. Starting in year 11, year 12, go to the university fairs. These are great questions to ask, because that science section, a university might, some of the West Coast universities tend to gravitate towards the ACT a little bit more than the SAT. So if a university is telling you that maybe this would be a good exam for you to take, maybe this would be beneficial because it does have somewhat of a science component to it, ask questions to universities. We always recommend contacting universities. That rapport can prove beneficial throughout the application process. ACT prep, again, there's prep just about anywhere you can find it. The website itself has some. Khan Academy is also a good source, as Mr. Daquan had mentioned. How to register, globalact.org. Registration is just about the same for any exam. You shouldn't have too much of an issue with that. And again, I'll just reiterate, if the student is registering for the exam, I know sometimes they're trying to do it a little quickly and they just want to get it done. This is not what they want to be doing at the time. They want to be YouTubing or chatting with their friends. The spelling of the name is quite important. They have become just a little bit more flexible if there's a discrepancy, but students have been sent home because of a discrepancy in name. So be really careful when you're entering that information.
Just real quick on this ACT registration. When you are going to register, please make sure you go to this website exactly. Don't do like I said with the SAT and just Google ACT registration if you decide to take this exam, because it's going to take you to the website for domestic students in the U.S. This website is particularly for international test registration. So make sure you go to this one specifically.
Thank you. Okay. So again, I mentioned a little bit, which one should I take? So that's kind of your comparison there. I think there is some more comparison information on the website, and we'll double check that when we're finished here today to make sure that's there if we don't have it. This is your main comparison. Again, the College Board SAT is a lot more manageable these days. We tend to see a lot less exhaustion when they leave the exam, and especially if their computer's working and everything goes well. It's a pretty quick exam, and it does provide what we need. And then again, the ACT, not too much longer, but it can turn into a longer exam should you choose to do the optional writing section. PSAT, we will be sending an email tomorrow, I believe. We were going to try and send it today, but we thought it more appropriate to send it tomorrow because we can answer some questions here. So a registration email should be going out tomorrow morning, or at least some point tomorrow. I will make one note that if you need accommodations, we do provide accommodations. They need to be requested. If you are sitting here or watching live, or you know anybody that might need to hear this sooner than later, you can request accommodations for certain reasons. So if you fill this out, there's a section on our form that tells us that you might need some accommodations. We'd like you to also email us directly as soon as you submit this form. The SSD deadline is on Monday, so we're going to have to do a little bit of a more expedited approach to get some of these things done. So if you wouldn't mind, if you do know any accommodations are necessary, let us know right away. Highly recommended for year 11s and 12s. Again, it's not so much, it is the content, but it's also the ability to take tests. My daughter, for example, graduated last year, went to Pitt. She's doing fine, but she had test anxiety. She would sit at home and study for hours. She knew every single thing she wanted to put on a piece of paper. Test day came, time can cause some anxiety. Maybe the first question that you thought you were going to know and you didn't know can cause anxiety. The repetition of taking this in a timed environment can be very beneficial. It provides a level of comfort that keeps your head clear, that is going to give you the ability to type in the correct answers probably more easily. We do recommend it, and it can be very beneficial. Test accommodations, I jumped the gun there. Again, it'll be on the registration form if you do. By the way, I'm sure I put dates on here. I can't recall if I put dates on there. Anyway, the PSAT at our school will be on October 30th in the afternoon. The one requirement for the PSAT is 2 weeks prior, we need to make sure that their devices are compatible and test ready. The last thing we want is an incompatible device when we're trying to take an exam. That's even more anxiety that we don't want to create for your son or daughter. And then once again, if you do know or think you need some accommodations, let us know. Okay, so a little bit of a schedule. Mr. Daquan alluded to some of this scheduling. Most students will take the PSAT once, occasionally twice, since we're offering it here. A lot of that happens in year 11, and it does happen in October. We do have the ability to choose a date in October, but we need to fit it around a lot of other things that are happening. So this is kind of an exam schedule for year 11. The IGCSE exams are unavoidable. And again, the IELTS and the TOEFL, we would like to see that completed earlier than later. It's just one thing to get out of the way. And as Mr. Daquan said, they're valid for 2 years. If you don't take it, if you have a lot of other things to do, it's not the end of the world. They happen very frequently. So there's no need to get frustrated or anxious if you're not taking this exactly when you should. You could take this on a holiday during a break time, over the half term. More than likely, one of these will be necessary. But if you're not sure, talk to us. One of the things that we like to get out of the way early if we can. Year 12 schedule. Again, we offer the PSAT in October. The IELTS, again, we're going to press that. Hopefully we can we like to, again, as Mr. Daquan said, get the majority of our testing needs and application component needs done before we start year 13. Again, term 1 of year 13 for our IB students is quite rigorous and quite demanding when it comes to time. And again, 1, 2, 3 times SAT, ACT. Again, the PSAT is kind of the taster session, maybe give you a good idea of, you know, how I should manage my time in a test, what it's going to look like, what it's going to feel like. The first SAT, again, if you are doing your research, because we push our balanced application list, you know, our REACH schools, when we look at maybe a student's GPA or SAT scores, we'll put them at about this level. We want them to dream, we want them to reach. So the schools that maybe want something a little bit higher than our actual SAT scores or what our grades are at the time, that would be in a reach category. And then something that we match directly with would be in a target category, and then we have a likely category. So when we do apply, we want to apply to a balanced list of those schools. How do I know? If you go to most university websites or some of the ranking sites, they're going to say they want a test range. And this can be very useful because that'll tell you, okay, do I need to take this again? These are the schools I want to apply to. I just took my SATs and I got a 1480, and the highest I'm going to need is a 1360. There's no reason to take the exam again. You're set up for everything. Now, they're going to also give you a range. Maybe they want a 1360 to a 1480, right? So those are they'll give you a range of the previous year's numbers and who was admitted to the university with a certain amount of numbers. Keep in mind that bottom number of the range is probably not what they're going to admit most students with. That lower score could have been an athlete, someone who is doing some special instrument in the band or the orchestra, so they might make exceptions to SAT scores. That's why they provide that range. So we will work with our students to make sure that we have the SAT scores we need, and once again, as Mr. Daquan said, do we need to send them? Sometimes it's not necessary. Anyway, a little tangent there on the timeline. And then year 13, again, we're at the only thing we'd prefer a student, we wouldn't even prefer it. If they have to take anything, hopefully we're down to an IELTS or a TOEFL score at this point, because we try and guide students and provide advice and timelines and plans to avoid any testing in year 13. The IB is rigorous, it is difficult, and we want the students to be able to focus on that schoolwork because those numbers are going to be directly correlated to our application somewhere down the line. And then that last one, IB exams. What should your student be doing now? We put this in kind of a grouping as such. The younger year groups, we try and talk to them passions, interest inventories, personality inventories, getting you set up for things that, which path should I go down? And I've had year 13s in the spring that still don't know what they want to do, and that's fine. We find a way. We would rather give them advice and put them in a situation where they want to be rather than forcing them into something that maybe isn't going to turn out exactly the way we want. So years 11 and 12 take the PSAT. 11 and 12 start prepping for some of the other exams they might need to take. Consider which exam you would like to take, the SAT, ACT, or both. I'm not sure what some other people may recommend. I'm not a big recommender of taking both unless it's necessary. I kind of liken it to playing a position in baseball, American baseball. If you play one position for 3 years, you're probably going to be better than you are when you're moving around the field all the time trying to figure things out. So again, we're very flexible with that. So a good idea to talk to your counselor if you are trying to decide which one to take or you'd like to decide what might be better for which institution or country. Register for College Board. That College Board is the testing account for the PSAT, the SAT. 11 and 12 take practice tests. The Khan Academy, wonderful place. The actual College Board website, plenty of, I'm not sure how many exactly they have on there now. I know they have 2 or 3, I believe. Wonderful place to practice for exams. 2 or 3, something like that. Yeah, and we also have some other additional links. If you have a son or daughter that practices 8 times and they've expunged all the Khan Academy and College Board websites, you have a pretty good student on your hand that cares a lot. We'll provide them some additional resources. But you just let us know if you have any questions. Once again, back to the website. Does everyone have access to the website? If you don't, talk to us afterwards. We'd really like to get you into the website. Unfortunately, we haven't opened up to the entire world yet because some of the stuff pertains to our school and our school only, and we don't want to provide access to the world. That's something you should be able to appreciate maybe more than some others. If you don't have access to the website, let us know when we're done here. We'd love to get you in there. Great source of information. Miss Elisa handles the website. It's a wonderful place to get what you need. But there's a section for standardized exams and some frequently asked questions there. And once again, if your question is not answered here, send us an email. We'll get you what you need. We are here for you. College Board. Again, we don't need to go too much into this. These slides will be presented to you. You just click on the links there. And they do have some nice chat lines. They're usually pretty quick, so you can get some information that way. I should have left it there. So we would like to open it up to...
So the question is that, is there any disadvantage for students that are year 11 to take the PSAT? Or is there, like, let's say that they haven't completed all the math and curriculum, would there be questions that they won't be able to answer?
So, yeah, it won't be any disadvantages for a student to just take the PSAT because, again, it is just a practice exam for you to get familiarized with the act of taking the SAT and what that feels like and what it's like to be in a timed exam environment. So it's only benefits, right, for you to learn areas that you may need to improve on as far as being ready for the official SAT. So, and the second thing, your other part, there may be, you may find content that the student has not came across yet or is not prepared for, and that's okay. That's also like a part of the learning process for the practice, right? So you know, okay, this is going to be a subject that's going to be covered in this exam, so I know I need to, prepare for that. But also the SAT is kind of developmental in the sense of like, you typically are taking it once you've learned a certain amount of content, basically. There was a way I used to say this, I can't remember, but so once you get to a certain level academically, then you will be would have covered the content necessary for the SAT. But when I went over the slides, for example, SAT covers specific math content, data analysis, and something else I can't remember that was on the slideshow. But so it may be that may happen. You may find that you don't know some content on the exam, and that's okay, because you still have time to learn that at school, right? Because it's kind of progressive in the sense of it's going to assess you on what you know.
The reason I ask is that there's 2 modules. So the first module is easy, medium, and hard. But the second module is based on how you did on the first module. So does that mean if they didn't know some of the content, what they're getting in the second module is going to be an easy question? When it comes to year 12, when they're actually taking it, the question will be a bit different, because if they were able to answer the first module better, the question will be much harder.
Yeah. I can't necessarily speak to the exact content that they're going to give if you go to if you take the first section and then the second section gives you more rigorous questions. I can't say if it's going to be the same kind of math questions but more difficult, maybe how they're wording it or framing the questions, or if it's going to be completely new content
And the marking, is it more geared towards the harder question gets more basis point, or is it equivalent?
Not to my knowledge, no. But there is a difference between the ACT and SAT as far as testing. And if I'm not mistaken, the SAT does not, if you don't get a question right, it doesn't count against you. Does that make sense? If you don't get a question right, it's about how many, so it's basically assessed on how many questions you get right, not if you get it wrong, it's harming you. Does that make sense?
Okay, so basically you lose time if you didn't get the question right, but they will give you more questions so that you can get it right.
You don't get more questions, you still got the same amount of questions, it's just based on how many questions you get correct.
Okay.
Right, so if you get it wrong or if you leave it blank, it won't negatively impact your score.
I understand. My second question is a little bit out of the context here, is that I understand there is a projected score for IB students to submit for applications, and that projected score, is it based on year 12, what they have completed, or is it from year 10 onwards?
You may have heard a few different terms, possibly anticipated, projected, predicted. The predicted scores, that's the term you want to remember. The predicted scores are the ones that will be attached to a university application. What is involved in a predicted score? The teachers have kind of a formulaic insight as to IA's projects, everything they've done. So they're predicting the outcome when the exams come, what they think the student might achieve in the end. I don't know exactly how a teacher engages that approach to a prediction, but I do know that we have a very solid system in place that provides very accurate predictions for our students. That is one thing we're pretty proud of, is teachers do produce very, very nice predictions for our students. So predicted grades are the grades that we will submit to universities if they request them. Most do.
So is it based on year 12 teachers, or are we talking about the teachers throughout from year 10 to 12?
This is in the IB. So these predictions are coming from IB.
Okay.
So they will, over time, they receive in year 12, I maybe, for year 12s, the teacher will observe them until the end of the school year. The first set of predicted grades come out at the end of the year 12. Now, this is, again, a preliminary prediction. And again, you might hear projected. Projected is kind of a way they're determining which direction they're headed. The prediction is kind of what they think they're going to end up with overall. So the first set of predicted grades at the end of year 12 are not grades that will be utilized for a university application unless there's some sort of summer application that's a specialty program where they want some sort of indication of where they're at that time. We do not use those grades for applications. They will, the first year, October year 13 is when they will receive, and I don't know if this is our term or it's just anybody's term, their first set of valid predicted grades. And I guess we could say valid because those are the ones that will be going to the university. Those are the ones that have the most detail and have the most input into the prediction. So the teachers have a lot of resource to get to that number. So students often think that if they're applying October 15th to Oxbridge or something like that, they're going to use their year 12 PGs. Those predicted grades are just kind of a general realization of kind of where we're at right now, what we might need to do over the summer to maybe increase some of those scores, and it gives you a talking point with the teachers. How did I get this, and what do I need to do if I'm not real comfortable with it and I want to improve it? The one thing to note about predicted, am I getting close to your answer?
Yes.
Another thing to mention about predicted grades is once they come out, you can't go back in time. So some students like to strategically wait to send an application because they think their predictions are going to go up. Yeah, they might go up, but they also might go down. So whatever grades are valid on the day that an application must be sent are the predicted grades that we're going to use. So for example, October 4th or 5th, our year 13s are going to get their first set of year 13 predicted grades. And those are the first set of grades that will be used for applications. They will receive them again at the end of November. This is where some students try to strategize. Well, my predicted grades in October, pretty good, but man, I've been working really, really hard. I think my December ones are going to go up. I'm certain of it. So they wait till December, and they're not as good as they were in October. And they're like, oh, well, can I use those old ones again? No, you can't go back in time. So this is where they really need to communicate with us and their teachers so we can get a very good feel on when we should send an application based on the likelihood of predicted grades. And that's why they're predicted. We cannot, there's no way for us to predict. They are predictions. They're usually pretty accurate. And the October predicted grades are usually the ones that are sent with the applications.
So the predictive grades are based on their work, their collaboration, and also their tests.
Yes. If you want to talk more about, I know a lot of students do wonder that, parents also, a teacher might be able to give you a little more insight as to what is involved with that exact grade. And they do become difficult sometimes. And I'm not sure if every school does this, but you might see two numbers on your school report when you do get your predicted scores. It could be a 5/6. One of those will be in bold, which means that is probably what we're looking at, but we're in a range where it's really hard for us right now to predict one number. So you might see two down the line, and if you have questions about that, the teacher is the best person to talk to about the predictions, and then advice on which score to submit to a university. If there are two, the student has a choice at that point which score to use. Usually we're going to use the higher score because we're probably going to get a better offer, but there are some times where we might need to talk about that two-digit prediction.
Does the year 12 teacher have any say into the predictive grade for year 13, or it's discarded, we're starting fresh on year 13?
It's academic data, and typically it's the same teacher that's going to produce the results, but if teachers do change, this data and this information is logged. So if there is a reason that it's not the same person moving through into year 13, there's a discussion, there's a collaboration to make sure that we are providing an accurate prediction. Yeah? Thank you for that. That's a lot of information that I think
I just have
a lot
one
of people,
question that's related to what she was asking. So if we go to U.S. universities, sorry.
You're next, I promise.
Sorry.
No worries.
This kind of dovetails to what she was asking.
This is good for everybody.
That so for U.S. universities, it's not just your year 12 and 13 grades. They also want to see how you did in year 10 and 11. It's a cumulative, right, GPA. So to her question previously, in year 10, you don't get a predicted grade in term 1 or term 1 or term 2. It's attainment only. So then in term 3, you get predicted grades on some, but then I'm trying to get a solid answer because it's like a moving target. I can't get a clear answer is what grades do you use in year 10, what grades do you use in year 11, and 12 and 13, so we can understand how our child's GPA is going to be calculated based on what tests, collaboration, projects. There just doesn't seem to be like a super, or even if it's not a formula. Like in the States, when you take an exam, that's the grade that you get.
Yep.
And then you add up to GPAs, it's math.
Yep.
And that's it. Here it's seems to be subjective. It's going to be based on the teachers. But regardless, what's the grade in year 10 that is used?
Well, they're semi-predicted also throughout the IGCSE process because that's a 2-year curriculum and they take a final exam. That's the grade that the universities are going to see.
Right.
So they are kind of, it's a similar cycle with the IGCSE process where we're not exactly sure what's going to happen in the end because you're going to take a final, that's going to be your final grade. On the transcript, in bold, is the final IGCSE exam result.
Okay.
So the university will see that, they'll see the class, that's how that's determined. So year 10 and 11 are finalized by that final IGCSE result, so you don't need to worry about that on the transcript, solid concrete information backed by AQA or whatever, Cambridge basically. Now when we get into the IB, also a 2-year program, now we're getting to the point where we need to start predicting something, because the universities are not like the US, where we have quarterly or semester exams that say this is exactly where you're at. That's your projection, kind of, in the US, is what those exams. Again, I think the IB curriculum is the best in the world. The one thing I'd like to see is some, instead of predictions, I'd like to see some of these, more concrete assessments that we may be able to use, but that's not going to happen. So 9 and 10, or 10 and 11, IGCS, their exams are complete. We know exactly what's happening. It's the predictions that come in the IB.
Okay.
Does that, yeah. And I get it. It's a lot of words and it's a lot of things. If you need some individual conversation, you reach out. Apologies. Hey, how are you?
I know. I just want to add a little bit on to that because I think there's also, I'm sorry, I'm from a different school. So when U.S. universities are looking at British curriculum, IGCSEs, and also IB, they're not going to be comparing our students against U.S. students with the GPA. So the school that I come from, we do not have GPAs at all, and that has not hurt anybody in terms of college applications. So I know it's really difficult because we can't give you, this is how it converts exactly, and most likely grades are not the same as attainment grades and so on. But the admissions reps in the US are very, very familiar with British curriculum, IGCSE, and very familiar with IB even more than my A-level school. So I just wanted to add that little bit on. And I do have a question, actually. In terms of accommodations for SATs, do we need to get some kind of paperwork from the school to be able to upload for the when we sign up for the actual SATs, or how does that work?
Yes, you would want to know. I think you're going to need some documentation. Specific information, I recommend Mr. Will Taylor.
Yeah, so usually they'll ask for you can just double check this with Mr. Will, because I haven't been the SAT coordinator in a few years now, so they might do it a little bit different. But in the past, you would just, if you have accommodations at the school, you would just take and upload the plan that you have here into the system. And that would be like proof that you have the support plan at school, and then they would give you what you're requesting for the exam, the SAT or ACT. But again, I just recommend double checking that with the coordinator here, Mr. Will, so he can just give you any updates if anything has changed since when I was doing it.
Hi. Thanks a lot for our presentation. My kid is in year 12, and I have more general thoughts about all this and related to either IELTS, TOEFL, and the path to university. I've been through this 2 times before, and the first question in my mind is, where is he or she going to go study? So my question is, does STA have statistics in terms of successful application to universities when it comes to either the US, the UK, Australia, Singapore, whatever? I think as a parent, that would help me as well to push my kids in either direction. Recently, I went to Singapore with my girl because she said, oh, I saw something on the internet, sounds interesting. Okay, let's go to Singapore, but I'm not going to do that in every single and possible country. So that's my question about statistics when it comes to STA graduates. Where do they in majority go, either the US or where?
As far as, yes, we do produce statistics. Our application platform that we adopted 3 years ago is CALFO. Parents, if you're not familiar with CALFO, application platform. We do enter data in there, obviously the applications the student plans to send, and then at the end of the school year, we've been trying to find a way to get more accurate results. So we have been now, before the year 13s are allowed to graduate, kidding, before they leave our school to get their cap and gown, we'll sit down with them and we'll go through their applications, and we want to know the results of these applications. So those results provide us information about offers to different places. Our CALFO system can produce reports. Another thing, do you have access to our website?
I'm actually not aware, but
Okay.
I guess the rest of the family is more aware than I am.
There's some
Yeah,
data.
we'll look at it. Yeah.
Yeah, let's get you into the website. There is some data and information that would be interesting for you there also. We also have something that's called specific data. We can pull things from reports that will give you that. Our school profile has a lot of data, I believe, that you're going to be looking for. How many students, what percentage of students go to the U.S., what percentage to Canada, to the U.K., to Australia, whatnot. We have those statistics. And we can get into some more I guess micro statistics if we needed to, but the general overview of our statistics can be found on our school profile. You can find that on the website, and then our KHE website will get you into there. And I can email you a copy of our school profile from last year if you'd like a copy of that.
Okay. Well, I won't keep the mic too much, but just another question related to this, because it's. Sorry.
I was going to add something to that, to his question. So I don't have, I'm new, of course, like 3 weeks, so I don't have all the generational statistics here. But I just want to share some insight based on some of the conversations I've been having with students since I've been here, and some of the common destinations that have come up and the students that I've talked to is Australia, the United Kingdom, and the U.S. There's been a sprinkle of European countries. Oh, and some other Asian countries, Thailand, of course, a few Korea, Japan, but that's on the lower end. But the most common that I've experienced so far, Australia, US, UK. A little bit of Europe here and there, a little bit of Canada, of course, Thailand, and then a couple countries further east.
Because language requirements are clearly not the same whether you apply in Australia or in the US when it comes to IELTS, I guess, for Australia as well, for instance. The grade required is actually lower in Australia. But I think another consideration for parents today, I work in the diplomatic area, so I face that every day in my job, either, putting a positive comment or negative comment in application, going to the visa section. And I think some countries as well are kind of shrinking their quota of foreign students. So that's also my concern, sending my kid to a foreign country instead of my home country, which has universities as well, but she went for the British system, so we'll continue with the English language. But I think that's also important to know if you have any communication as a school here in Bangkok from consulates, either the US or Australian, when it comes to quota, because I keep hearing from those different colleagues in the embassies that quotas are shrinking, and then it also relates to your own nationality, so it's not specifically to STA students. But clearly, if you come to Myanmar, where I'm living at the moment, your application won't go through as quickly as a Taiwan, and my kid is from Europe, so I guess she'll have a better chance even than somebody coming from Myanmar, unfortunately, but that's how it works. So I'm just wondering, do you have your own network to those, let's say, 3 different countries and their consulates when it comes to some kind of fast tracking for your students who will apply in a few months to come?
And I'll let Mr. Rob answer this, but we don't, to my knowledge, have any partnerships with the consulate, but we do have access to educational articles and journals that teach us and inform us about things like student visas. For example, in Canada, they reduced the number of student visas that they're offering to international students, and that was a big conversation that shook the higher education world for a little bit because nobody knew how that was going to impact applications. Australia also just formalized a process as well where they reduced the number of student visas that they're allocating to international students. So part of it is our own independent research and having access to the resources that can keep us informed about these changes, as well as we have a pretty strong counseling community here that I'm very impressed by because I've never been a part of something like this, where we have these kind of conversations and dialogues about changes in the university admissions world, because some people, you know, are more, some counselors are more in tune with the research and things like that, and they are willing to share that insight with us. So we come together pretty frequently to share resources and talk about updates and changes that going to impact our students and that whole process. But I'll let Mr. Rob add some other things.
Yeah, Daquan answered that almost as accurately as you can. I'll just add a few things. We do have direct relationships with One Education and Austrade. If you are looking into, it's a different kind of agency. And sorry, I'm going to answer this a little quicker. We have about 2 minutes, maybe take one more. One Education we've been working with quite exclusively. For our Australian international students. They will not work with Australian nationals, only for international students. They are wonderful. If we would request some of that data, we haven't requested it specifically that way, but we can get some of that data for specific places, Australia being one. And you're more than welcome. Just remember the term One Education. If you can't remember that, email us. We'll get you that information. I know your son or daughter probably has heard about it if they're thinking about Australia. And EdUSA. You can Google EdUSA. They have an office here in Bangkok. They're also wonderful. Also could provide that data for you if you're looking into that. And we do have, again, we pride ourselves on our connections to specific individual universities and also to groups around the world. And they change often, there's turnover often, but the CIS fair that's coming in the end of September 20th, for if you have a son or daughter, I couldn't recommend anything more highly than taking your son or daughter to that fair on a Friday night. It is absolutely wonderful. And then Counselor Conference on Saturday. So this is also where we meet the Japanese reps, the Korean reps, to get some of these data points. We don't always publish them, but we can find information. If you're looking for something very specific, we'll try and help you find that.
And universities are also pretty forthcoming with this information. If it's a change that's happening in their region, and we're like on their email list, their mailing list, they will send us that information because they know that's valuable information that we need to know, so we can advise our community so everybody can be informed about what's the best way to move forward or how this may impact their plan. So universities will inform us. We're researching, we're in Facebook counselor groups and groups within our community. So we're getting information from a lot of different sources.
And if I was to guess, again, we advocate on behalf of our students. We do not communicate on behalf of our students. Students are best served asking questions directly to universities themselves. The universities appreciate that, and they really advocate for that. If you do have a son or daughter, I think a university would be blown away if a student called a rep and asked that question. I think that would really be a beneficial question to ask and reveal a lot, because I don't think there's many students asking those kind of questions. When they get into depth with a university rep asking these kind of things, it really does show interest. And particularly for U.S., can't say how much, but you develop a relationship with some U.S. institutions, there's a benefit there. I'm not sure exactly how much of a benefit, but students reaching out to institutions really find this pretty impressive. Is it okay? One more question. One more.
Yeah, I've got one. SAT against ACT. If a student is stronger in sciences and doing multiple sciences currently, would you advise them to stay with SAT? Or if sciences are going to be their future as an entrance point, should they take ACT instead?
Again, that would probably be more, you can follow up here if you want. That would be, we have a U.S. interest here, I'm assuming? No, okay. I'm going to let Mr. Daquan finish the answer to my question. a U.S. institution is really going to look at the 4 years of an education and what classes they've taken to meet prerequisites for whatever major that they're going to get into. For example, engineering. They want to see your math and science on a high school transcript at a pretty high level, depending on what kind of school you want to get into. And again, if you're not at a high level, there's an engineering school for you. There's always a place for a student to go. We don't fail. If you want to study engineering, we're going to get you there. Whether it be A to B or ABC or ABCD, we're going to give you the resources and the information you need to get there. You're referring to the ACT science? Yeah. Not an overwhelming advantage unless you contact the university and say, we would prefer to see an SAT score just to see what it's like in that section. Go ahead.
I'm sorry to
you
cut
go
you
ahead
off,
and
Rob.
finish this.
I just want to bring your attention to this point here on the ACT, because just because you are skilled in science, right, that doesn't, the ACT is not testing you on your skill in science. It's testing your ability to assess the science content to read. It does not measure your science ability. So just because you excel at science doesn't mean you should necessarily take the ACT, okay? But, you know, if you're not, I know you said you were interested in U.S. institutions, so if you're not even applying to an institution that would even accept the ACT, they're basically just going to they're going to assess you based on your science subjects in the IB DP program, if it's bio, chem, physics, whatever it is, on your predicted grades, and as well as how you performed in the sciences in the years prior to the IB. Yeah. So again, yeah, it's just scientific, it's just science reasoning, not science ability.
I just wanted to plug some upcoming events. So we already heard about the fair on the Friday evening, right? The 20th is it the 20th, the CIS fair open to the, okay. Okay, so evening of the 20th is the big fair where there's over 200 universities from around the world. I think half are from the US, the other half are from kind of everywhere else. As a part of the Greater Bangkok Fair, there's also going to be evening events on the 18th and the 19th. My school, Bangkok Prep, is hosting both nights. On the 18th, we have a UK evening, so we have about 32 universities that are coming to do panel sessions on higher education in the UK. And then on the 19th, we're holding a Canadian fair with all of the big Canadian players. And so some of these questions that you were asking about, how are visas changing? Canada had some big changes last year. The reps are amazing when you talk to them. They'll be very straightforward about how it has or has not affected them. In fact, we found out it really didn't affect in terms of the places that our students are applying. So the letter should be going out tomorrow. Are you guys sending out, or should I be sending through the... Okay. I think Swati sent the stuff, but I can also at least pop it into the year 12 parent group as well. There's a sign-up link, and it's not just Bangkok Prep. There's actually all kinds of evening events all over Bangkok. There's US, there's, I think, Art Portfolio, there's Europe. I think there might be an Australian and an Asian evening as well. So you're welcome to sign up for one on the Wednesday and one on the Thursday. Highly encourage people to do that. It's a kind of a smaller environment, so you can have some really good one-on-one time with the reps. So thank you for that.
Thank you. So at this time, we will, formally conclude our presentation for today. We will stand by for anybody who wants to ask us some individual questions. We do thank you all for being here. It's been a pleasure, and you all enjoy the rest of your evening.
Thank you very much.